so you know, we will be recording this meeting. So just want you to be aware of that. I have a comment here on Star, who works with homeless youth, wanting to find ways to help them make money. It's really interesting. I was invited to do an interview for a local, I guess, an online magazine that talked about cryptocurrency and how it's being sold to many young people as the way of the future, as the way they're going to make their retirement savings, make their life savings, make everything wonderful. And I said, I hope that you're also teaching about the risks associated with cryptocurrency. It's always good to have both sides. Anybody else?
And if you're just joining us, we're just asking you to know what motivates you to learn about money. I can say, while people are typing in, one thing that motivates me is how gratifying it is to see people be able to take control of their lives in a way that is not as easy to do in a lot of things. Like if you start to change some of your money habits, it can really change things in your life pretty visibly in a relatively short period of time. So I really love helping people achieve their goals. It's very gratifying to me. So that motivates me to learn more and more, because that's the other thing about me. I'll just say I really love sticking it to the big businesses that are taking advantage of most of us, in my opinion.
Thanks, Sharon. I will say that you're never too young and never too old to learn something about money. A lot of the things that I learned when I was young still serve me well. And there are some others that I probably should let go. So.
When Christine says she wants to educate her children so they can make better choices than she did when she was young. So.
Oh, Christine, but don't you think that those bad things were such wonderful lessons?
Good point.
It's those painful things that somehow we never forget them, unfortunately. But I am right there with you. If there's anything you can do to facilitate your children avoiding the things that tripped you up, I guess while recognizing that they're going to find new ways to fall down, and hopefully you'll be able to help them find their way up. It's funny, I study a lot of young adults, and what is fascinating to me is so many of them say, my parents taught me this, I just didn't want to learn until I made a mistake. And then it was like, oh, yeah, that's why they're doing these things. So, okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. So welcome, everyone. Sharon and I are delighted to have you here. The topic of our conversation today is Make Money Make Sense. And what we're going to introduce you to and share with you is a financial activity toolkit that we worked on together, and hope that you find some value in it and maybe even something that you want to use in your work. So yes, we're Sharon and Joyce, and we love to do these things together. But rather than us kind of blab at you, I'm going to just play a brief video, hopefully, that will give you an indication of who it is you're talking with and where this idea came from. The Joyce and Sharon show. Hi, I'm Joyce, and I'm Associate Professor in Family Social Science at the University of Minnesota. And this is my colleague.
Hi, I'm Sharon Powell, and I'm an Associate Professor of Extension at the University of Minnesota. And we have collaborated together on a project called Make Money Make Sense. We thought we'd take a little bit of time to say what it is about this project that we are excited about and what we like about working with each other. And so I'm going to start and say that what I think is so exciting is that we've created projects that I think help people address their underlying motivation and their own excitement about decision making around money. And so I love our projects because beyond talking about content, we really help people identify excitement in Sharon's voice when she talks about the learners, because then what that allows me to do is dig deeper and say, why does this work? How does this work? And how can we make it work better for other people? Which leads me to conduct new research and ask new questions. What is most effective about this relationship that we have is it is very dynamic. So as a researcher, I may have some insights based on the work that I've done or others have done, and I share that with Sharon, not so much as to tell her what's right or how to do something, but to provide insights that she might be able to catch and use with her own work. That's right. And then she takes that work and learns from the students as well. And the process is one of this flow of information forward and backward, where we are all getting something special out of the process.
That's right. And now we're going to share our activities with you, and we hope you get stuff out of it as well. And you can add to the process.
Thank you.
Now what always happens is I lose that thing. Hold on, everybody. Great. So as you can see, Sharon and I have very different views on looking at financial education. Sharon is the consummate educator. She loves to excite students, and she loves to see them learn, and she loves to learn from them. I am the researcher. I want to know why things work and how things work and how to make things work differently for different people. As we know, we've already talked a little bit about some activities that are, or some behaviors that might have worked a while ago, maybe when we were younger, but times have changed. And so I'm always interested in what it is that's changing and how we change with it. So with that said, I would like to talk with you a little bit, so hang with me here because this is the researcher starting out, but don't worry, Sharon will take over and the practice will come in, and hopefully that will be a lot more fun. But the research that underlies this whole process that we're going to talk about is, how do people learn to make good financial choices anyway? And so for more years than I like to count, I've been studying financial behaviors and financial decision-making, as I mentioned earlier, notably with young adults, to see how they go about making these choices and what I might be able to do to help them make better choices. And so in the years that I do this research and synthesizing the research, what I came up with is this model of how we become good financial decision makers. And I think the fun part about most of the financial education that I see is we want to go right to the bottom line. We want to teach a financial education course, and we want kids to make good financial decisions. But what we forget to think about is this big blue box in the middle. Okay, I call it the blue box because black box makes me a little nervous. We do know what goes on inside the blue box, and that's what I want to talk a little bit about today. When parents help their children learn about finances, or anything for that matter, they have a profound influence on them, good or bad. But they are spending so much time with them, and children, particularly when they're young, if we start when they're young, they love us and they want to do what we ask them to do. Over time, there are other influences that come into play. And that could be friends, that could be colleagues, that could be spouses and partners, which also have an influence on the way we think about money and what we do with our money. In addition, we know that so many of the responsibilities associated with long-term financial well-being fall on the individual today. And what that requires in the world of more and more complex financial products is a level of understanding and knowledge that really does surpass what previous generations had to learn. And so this importance of financial education is growing and growing and growing at all levels. Okay? However, as I mentioned earlier, it's not education alone or someone's influence alone that's going to make us do the right thing or do things in our own best interest. Inside this box, there's this internal process that goes on inside of us, and that's what we're excited about tapping into. Meaning, when you're exposed to something new, new ideas, a new way of thinking, that either fits with your way of thinking or doesn't fit with your way of thinking, you're forced to reflect. And when you reflect on your own choices and your own lives, it gives you this sense of, who am I? What do I believe? This is what's happening. This is what I see. This is what I'm hearing. What do I believe? And so this back and forth that goes on between what you're thinking in your head and what you believe inside of you gets you to act. And that's those acts that get us into trouble or get us out of trouble. But those are the financial behaviors that we're looking to influence. My point is, it is not a single education class, lesson, or idea or person that's going to help young people make better choices. But really, what we're looking for are opportunities, every opportunity we can get, to give young people chances to act on information so they can learn for themselves, so they can discover for themselves what works, when it works, and why it might be the right thing for them to do. So that's a little bit about the theory behind this whole process. And please, everybody, I should have said this, neither Sharon or I minds being interrupted. So if you have a question, just pop it in the chat. We'll be happy to respond to it. So I will tell you about how our story began, this particular story. I received a grant from the National Institute of Food and Agriculture to do a program or develop a program for children and youth at risk. What that really means is I was interested in this financial decision-making for young people, but not just about money, but the choices they make. Because a lot of times with young people, and for adults for that matter, a lot of the life choices we make have financial implications, but we don't think about that. We think about values, we think about goals, and sometimes forget to think about the finances that go along with it. And so my initial intent was, let's try and adapt these school-based financial education programs for out of school activities. Why? Because we find in a lot of areas of research that the difficulty in school-based financial education is sometimes people learn for a grade. And financial education and financial decision-making really isn't about a grade. It's about, a life skill that we're trying to teach. Well, life skills are wonderful when they're brought into out-of-school activities, because that allows us to put the decisions in the context of the way young people will use them. Okay, so what are the challenges about doing that? Well, first of all, it's voluntary. And unlike a classroom where you have these wonderful students sitting there in front of you because they have to be there for their grade, voluntary participation means just that. They can show up or not show up based on their own interests and own needs and whatever else is driving them that day. We also find that the problem with an out-of-school program or an after-school program is they have had it with school. After you've gone to school all day, you certainly don't want to come to sit in another class and learn about financial education. And frankly, we find that when it comes to money, well, the reality is kids are not that interested. And so what Sharon and I tried to figure out was, how are we going to come up with some ways to make this idea of learning about finances or choices that we can make with our money a little bit more interesting. So the marching orders were, they've got to be short. I mean, 30 minutes is about all you're going to have when you're working with young people. Actually, I think 30 minutes is probably all you're going to have when you work with adults, but that's a different story. It has to be interactive. Okay, giving someone, like I'm sitting here talking at you, is probably not a whole lot of interest on your end. So hopefully we'll be able to engage you a little bit more. The content has to be standalone. What that means is, it's when you're taking a class on financial education in a schoolroom or in an adult program, there's more of a commitment. Because we knew that the students we were working with, the youth that we were working with, might show up 1 week and not show up again for another 2 or 3 weeks, whatever we taught them had to be standalone, direct and applicable right then, something that they could learn from, just in case they didn't come back again. Of course, we were hoping that we were so dynamic that they'd want to show up, but you have no control over that. The other piece of it is we wanted to make sure that the content that we were teaching was directly applicable in the context of youth life, not what they needed to know when they retired, but what could they use right now. And so this is the beginning of our time together. We are showing you our involvement of one, it wasn't just us teaching youth, it was youth working with adults. So we had this mentoring thing going on, which was great fun because the adults and the children were learning from each other. We made them interactive so that there was hands-on stuff happening. And we tried to encourage everyone to be part of this whole thing. One of the lessons we heard from a parent was, my daughter, shopping with my daughter is taking so much longer because now she has to check the labels and prices on everything before making a decision. Now, the mother said that with equal amounts of frustration because everything was taking longer, and pride because her daughter really was getting the message that you have to be a smart shopper and there are ways to make good choices about what we spend our money on. So.
Okay, so my turn. Tag.
You're it.
So just to continue along the life of this project, in the summer of 2020, thanks to Joyce's hard work, we were awarded a small grant called the Mary O'Neill Grant. And it gave us enough money to take the lessons that we had been using during the SciFar grant and put them into a nice graphically designed format that would be more easy for people to use and more appealing. And then we also could develop some accompanying resources to go with that. So that's what we did. We selected the top 10 lessons. If all of you are financial educators or sometimes teach financial education lessons from time to time, you probably are like me in that, I don't know, necessity is the mother of invention. So I wind up with more than 10 lessons to pull from at any given time. But we thought, well, these are the ones that are really kind of the ones that I go to the most and that sort of stand out as being the most dynamic and that young people seem to appreciate. And then we just worked over the pandemic time really to design the activity workbook. And then through our conversations with some youth organizations that we actually wound up getting to pilot with in the summer, when we were preparing to do that, we would meet with some of the youth workers and they asked us if it would be possible to create, in addition to our workbook and the activities, to create some kind of resource for the young people to have. And so we wound up calling it a passport. And so basically it's like it's a little bit bigger than a passport sized book, but it's a small book that has accompanying sort of tips that are associated with each of the lessons. So small personal finance tips, and then room for them to take notes, and also a space where once they've completed the lesson, we give them a sticker which they can put in their passport. So that's I think why we especially ended up calling it a passport, because each time they completed a lesson, they got a sticker. And we were hoping that that might also motivate people to return for more lessons, because we have 10 lessons in the workbook, and usually when I was working with organizations this summer, we didn't have a 10 lesson format. We had about a 6 lesson format. But I can't remember, Joyce, if this was part of your outline about what's kind of common in these after school programs. Is that, I mean, it makes sense. You would probably just know this, but none of these are mandatory. And so you really can't count on the same group of people showing up over time for each lesson. So really we designed them to be standalone lessons, but the more that you came, the better, the more global the understanding of the whole topic. And so we hope to get people to return by motivating them. Let me see what else. Oh yes, and then these organizations I'm mentioning that we partnered with are here in the Twin Cities, or based kind of in the Twin Cities. One is called Growing Good, and it's a work program where for young people that is sponsored by the Arboretum. So they work in gardens all summer long, and they not only work on planting the gardens, but they also take their produce, and usually they create some kind of entrepreneurial thing with it. Either they have like a farmer's market, or they create salsa to sell, or different things like that. So it's this really neat, in addition to working and doing that kind of stuff, they also, it's a little bit of like a camp. So they get to do fun things as well. Go to museums, go bowling. You can tell I like the program. I'm always trying to get my own children to sign up, but they never were interested. Anyways, that's growing good. And so they asked us to come in once a week and do a brief lesson with the young people about money, because they get paid for their project too. And so they thought it would be a good idea to apply some of the lessons to their own money management. The second group is the YMCA of the Greater Twin Cities. They have a child and family support services program for young people who are enrolled in extended foster care. And so I actually partner with them on other programs, and I've become, fairly close colleagues with some of them. And they knew that we do different programming. And so when we approached them about doing, piloting these activities with them, one of the women that I've worked with quite a bit came back and said, how about if I co-facilitated with you? Because I really love money management, and I would just love to get, more experience under my belt. And so we thought that was great. So her name is Shaquana Lattimore, and she actually got to present with us when we talked about this project at a conference last fall, and she continues to do this teaching. And so it was a really great experience. So that's that part of it. And then I think we have some, what's next, Joyce? Oh yeah. So this is a picture of the front of the toolkit. So this would be like the facilitator guide, basically what it looks like at the front. Or I guess it's the front, and then also kind of the facing page where you can see I wrote a little explanation for how this came to be. Okay. Oh yeah, here's some pictures from this summer. So these are folks in the YMCA, and this is one of the activities that we got the original version of this from a health and nutrition educator somewhere down the line. I don't even know who it was. It got passed down from educator to educator, but it feels a little bit like a game show. And you talk about comparison shopping and just being a smart shopper. And so you set up all these different stations for them to answer questions. It's pretty fun. They like it. And then this is a picture of the same group, the YMCA, doing a budgeting activity that we call minding your money. And I, in my head, for short, call it M&M budgeting, because you use 2 fun packs of M&Ms, and we have a case study, and it just helps us go over the very rudimentary components of budgeting. And then this final example is a game that we call the Road to Satisfaction, which again was developed by my predecessors originally, and we adapted it a little bit. And it's really a game that focuses on decision making, and it's kind of like Candyland, but with money. So you go through, and we use coins as the playing pieces, and you go through, and each card, when you get to a square, you draw a card, and it gives you a scenario, basically, like you get your allowance, but then you spend it all on CDs the first day or something. And then it usually will say like stay put or something like that. And so this helps us talk with people about what practices lead to financial satisfaction, the road to satisfaction, which things might get in your way.
I'd also want to interject at this point, which is this particular activity, the colors and the brights, you might think that these are not appropriate for young adults. But I have used this with community college students and university college students, and they want to play the game again, and they want to play the game again. What we did for the case of college students was we changed the cards so that they reflected the particular types of problems that community college students or university students would get into, like not paying their invoices on time, or not verifying that they had that a check that came back to them for financial aid was actually theirs and therefore spent it and didn't have to be repaid. So even though it looks sort of childish, I think the mistake we sometimes make as financial educators and practitioners is, oh, they're beyond this, when the reality is when it comes to money, there's a bravado that they're beyond this, but when it comes to actually learning about it, this makes it fun. This makes them feel like they are capable and they're willing to learn more.
That's a great point, Joyce. We should, every time someone adapts those cards, we should try to get them up on or somehow make them shareable so people can choose from the different scenarios, One thing I was going to say too about this is I've found in general in my work, I wind up creating a lot of case studies because when you talk about money management with something like this, they give just time and again, each time you pull a card, you get a very specific example of what we mean by money management, or decision making. And so it makes it easier for people to have an idea of what they might do when they get in that situation, but it's very low risk in terms of they don't have to present their own information or talk about their own mistakes. They can just hear about these examples of these imaginary people making mistakes, and then they can still get the information, but they don't have to deal with the the self blame or anything like that sometimes comes with something like money. Okay, shall we move on? All right, this is the page from the facilitator guide for another activity that we have called Imagining Your Future. And it's really just a visualization that I've done in a lot of different settings. But initially, when I developed this, it was part of a longer class about goal setting. And so we began the class with this to sort of allow young people to have a chance to think and just sort of kind of daydream about what they might like their lives to be like someday. And so we thought that we might spend a little bit of time and try it out with you all, if you all are game to do that. It's a great one for doing online too, so that's something just to keep in your back pocket as well. So I guess shall we just go ahead with it, Joyce? Okay. So like I said, we wanted to present young people with an opportunity to really just think, sort of turn inward and think about what is it they would like their lives to be like. Because I think sometimes all of us get busy, but certainly young people do too. They're busy with what's in their current lives, they're preoccupied with that. But maybe they haven't had as much of a chance to think really deeply about what they would like their lives to be like someday. So we wanted to give them a chance to explore that before we started talking about goals, so that they might have a little bit more thought behind their answers about what their goals might be for their lives someday. Make sure there's no questions. Okay, so here's the way this works. And you can, again, adapt any of these activities to work best for you. You can try them out different ways. It's no problem. But usually what I ask people to do is just answer the questions that I'm asking them in their mind and think about it. But sometimes people, if I have a very extroverted group, they prefer to have a group discussion about all the questions. So if you see your group leaning that way, I say go with it. That's just fine. But for today, why don't we try it as a visualization? So I'm going to ask all of you to get yourself in a comfortable position. I don't know who knows where you're zooming in from, maybe home in your PJs. But anyways, wherever you are, try to put yourself in a comfortable position. I'm sitting in a chair, so I'm going to make sure my feet are grounded on the floor. And then just put your eyes in a place that it's comfortable to let them rest, like it's sort of a resting position, or maybe close your eyes a little bit and you can just sort of tune in to what I am saying. Okay, and now we're going to take a moment to imagine your life 5 years from now. So I want you to first think about your life 5 years from now, and then I'm going to ask you some questions. First of all, where will you be living? In 5 years, do you think you will be in a large city, small town, maybe in the countryside or a suburb? Where do you think you will be living? And next, I want to know, what will your home be like? You may live in a house. You may live in an apartment. You may live in a dorm room. Who will you be living with? Friends? Maybe you'll be living with your family. Maybe you'd like to be living by yourself. And what kinds of things will you see when you look outside your window? Will you see trees or tall buildings? Maybe a beautiful garden? Maybe lots of people walking by? If you think about your life 5 years from now, how will you spend your days? Do you think you might be working or going to school? Do you think you might spend some of your time volunteering? Do you think you might be hanging out with friends? And what will you be doing for fun? And how will you be making money 5 years from now? What kind of work appeals to you? And now I want you to think for a minute and put yourself even farther ahead into the future. Think about yourself 10 years from now. Think about how old you will be 10 years from now. And you could think about all those questions I just asked you, plus a few more. Do you think 10 years from now you will have someone special in your life? Will you have a career? Will you have children? Maybe you would like to be a foster parent or adopt children. Or maybe you don't think children would be in your future 10 years from now, but maybe having a pet. Okay, now I'm going to ask you to come back from your future time to the present. And we can talk a little bit about some of the things that you saw when you were thinking about your future. Okay, and so now it's just me talking again. That's pretty much the activity. I think since I first created this, and like I said, I've used it in different settings, and people have suggested to me that for young people, 5 and 10 years may feel too far into the future, that it might be hard. So you could always, depending upon how you feel about your group, you could say 2 years into the future, or you can adapt it however you would like to in a way that might fit. I guess, would anyone like to share one thing they saw when they were doing their visualization in the chat? You don't have to. When I'm leading this activity, I just ask it in that same way too. I say, would anyone like to share some of the things about their lives that they saw? And maybe people do, or maybe they don't. But a lot of times I pair this activity with the hopes and dreams collage, which is also in the Make Money Make Sense project or toolkit. And so really I'm doing this visualization first, so that when they start to create their collage, they have some ideas of like really what they want to include on there when they're looking through the magazines. So anyways, does anybody want to share something they saw about their lives? I know you're a different crowd. Or did I put everyone to sleep because it's late afternoon?
Well, what I will do is, I'm sorry, I don't mean to break the reverie, because there's something very soothing about that whole thing. But I will jump in, because there's what I love about this toolkit is we have the activities that you can do and you can customize, because you're going to know who it is, the youth that you're working with, better than we do. And there's a flexibility with this toolkit that we hope that you can explore. But there's another part of it, which is every one of the activities, we provide some of the research that says why these things work. So for example, in this visualization techniques, there is research that shows when you actually visualize something, okay, you're activating in your brain the same areas that happen when you actually do something. And so if you're working with youth, homeless youth, or youth who don't have access to a lot of opportunities or feel they don't have access to opportunities, this is a great way to get them realizing that if you think it, okay, if you believe in it, that's a great motivation to get you moving in that direction, which really sets up the next steps for you to say, if you're starting to feel something, getting excited about something, now we can help you, we can work with you to break this into steps to actually achieve these things. Because it's not just about dreaming it, you have to take action to make it happen. But the other thing that happens if you're young, if you are stuck in the day-to-day activity of daily lives, which most of us are, just allowing yourself some time to think about something other than the present opens up your mind to possibilities that you might not have seen before this. And a lot of what it comes to when working with money is we're focused on the stress of money, as in there's not enough of it, or how do I make more of it, as opposed to money really is just a way to kind of activate our dreams and hopes and desires for the future. So Sharon and I, when we put this together, a real focus for us is this isn't for us. This is for you to take and do and use in ways that help you particularly work with youth of all ages, because that's our big thing is if we can start to engage young people thinking about money while it's still a fun thing, then you have a way of capturing them to move forward. Does anybody have any questions or any comments that they have for us? Oops, that was not where I meant to go. Hold on. So what's in the toolkit? I'll let Sharon talk about that. Well, I will just say that the toolkit is readily available. We have a limited number of printed materials, but all of the materials are available online. And oops, I did it again. And you're welcome to download them and use them without any charge to you. So I'll let Sharon talk about what's in the toolkit.
Thank you. Yeah, I went over a little bit of this. I think I jumped the gun some, but basically we have a facilitator guide, which includes instructions and materials for all 10 of the financial activities. So you can have a hard copy for sure, and you could just like make copies using that, but you can also have a PDF of it, and then you can have a little bit cleaner copy of any of the activities using that. So that's in there. And then we have the workbook, which we call the passports for youth participants. And then we also made these stickers that I mentioned, but we really enjoyed how pretty those came out last summer. So those are fun, and you can have some of those as well. And then we have also on the website with each activity, we have a brief video of me kind of talking about how I use the activity and some suggestions for how you could use it. And then that's it. And Joyce, actually, you know what? I think I'm going to put another link to the toolkit in the chat that is a little bit different from this site. So I'm going to run and grab that while we're sitting.
I'll let you grab that, and then I'm going to just move on forward and say we are delighted to recognize Chiquana Lattimore and all the youth and young adults that really worked with us to see how to make these activities appropriate, fun, engaging, and useful to the young people that we worked with. For those of you who are attending, if you are interested in receiving a certificate of participation for your work, we will provide you a link to the evaluation for this particular session. And on that evaluation, you can tell us that you would like to receive a certificate, and we'll make sure that you get that as well. Which leads us to the actual evaluation. So Sharon, you want to pop that in there too?
Sure.
Okay.
Um,
It's a
Oh.
very short evaluation. We really would welcome your feedback on this. Any questions that you have on this, you're welcome to contact either Sharon or myself. And again, it is readily available for you to see it.
and
Yeah,
Christine had a question, and actually, if once I put this in the chat, and once you're through, Joyce, I can, and you'll stop sharing your screen, I can share my screen and just show
Okay,
people
let me
around
do
the
that.
website a little bit.
All right, hold on a second. Stop share. Okay.
Okay, now I will share my screen. And I just put the link to the evaluation in there.
Oh, great.
And this is the link that I put in to go to Make Money Make Sense. So this is just a little bit more recent update on the page that I just put in. So you can recognize some of these pictures, but to access the toolkit, you click on this button. I can just show you what happens. And then you just have to go. I have access to financial workbook, of course. So I would say, I can say yes. Let's see what happens. I guess maybe I haven't gone this way. It doesn't believe me. Anyways, you put your info in, and then it'll send you in. Oh, this is what Joyce had initially put in there, so maybe we should just use that one. But you can come in here and see it says a toolkit, and so here's the activity book with the lesson plans, and then we have a special game board separately because it's so big. It's kind of designed for an I think it's called an 11 by 17 size. And then these are cards that you use for the different games because it's just a little bit easier to print them out separately. And then the passports and stickers are right here. And then the evaluation materials are over here. So you can just click on them and use them however you want. Stop sharing.
Basically, you are welcome to download anything that you'd like. We do have a limited number of print copies that we're certainly willing to send out to you. If you let us know, that would be fine. We'd get it to you. So yeah, are there any questions that we can answer to you? We love the toolkit too. The kids, I mean, and I call them kids, but these were young adults. They were 19, 20 years old, and they were into it. They were into it.
So yes, Christine, just so you know, yes, you can definitely print the workbook, or you can just keep it as a PDF and then print out the pages that you need. Or it's not super long. Would you say like 40 pages or something like that, Joyce?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The workbook is on this link?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yep, as are all the videos, which you can look at. Because one of the things that I was always impressed by is Sharon has a way of introducing the activities that got all the youth feeling like they were part of this and excited about it. And I think part of it is because Sharon is just wonderful with teaching students, and Chiquana did the same thing. But for some people who are working with youth, particularly youth who may be at risk for other issues, they may not know, or let's put it this way, the kids are fine. I don't know enough about finances to teach them, and so I'm not comfortable. So the intent with these little videos is Sharon setting up what the purpose of the lesson is, how she introduces the lesson, so that people who are using these feel right at home in doing the work themselves. So yeah.
Well, Joyce, you're very, very kind and so complimentary, but I think we make a great team. I would say we both bring our own interests and gifts to the project. And Jeanette, when you asked if this was if you could access the stuff, if you go to that link that I showed you all, and then I showed you that web page, and you hit the access the toolkit, the reason why first you kind of give some information is we're just trying to capture what kind of people are using the toolkit. So if you enter that information, then you'll get sent an email that has a link to all of the materials. So that's the way that works.
I found it. You're right. Thank you.
Oh yeah, sure.
Great, great.
So, we're our stuff's up on the web and everything's kind of automated, but we're real life people working here. So please always reach out if you have questions or so you're trying something and it doesn't make sense to you or anything like that, I'm happy to try to troubleshoot or clarify in any way, or just hear about if you enjoyed the activities or how your young people enjoyed them, how it's going for you.
I'm gonna try the game and I'll provide feedback because it's hard to engage young adults.
Yes, it is. It is. It is.
Mhm.
If you use the cards that are on the website that say additional cards, there's two sets. One set are the ones that come with the game, but the additional cards are actually the ones we use with the college students.
Okay.
Mhm.
So you may be able to pick and choose some of the questions, and you can make your own. To tell you the truth, you know what the students are really into, which is a helpful thing.
Well,
So-
or like someone mentioned, they work with homeless youth, and I don't know if those are homeless youth, maybe are also not living with their parents, and a lot of those cards
They're
have to
not,
do
they're
with.
living in the hotel.
Okay, yes, you might want to make some adjustments on the cards as
Yeah,
well.
because most of them, I would have to adjust it because most of them, they don't think about more than 24 hours
Yeah.
Sure,
in the
yeah,
future because
everything's
they've
really
worried
up
about where
close.
they're going to eat next or where they're going to live next. And yeah.
And see, I mean, I feel for the role that you are playing because they're understandably concerned about the next 24 hours. But you also want to give them some space in their brains that life is more than just a 24 hours. And so anything you can do to nudge it that way has got to give them some sense of relief. And so, yeah, I hope you find these useful to you.
Yeah, I would say maybe that a perennial favorite with every group I've ever worked with is the M&M budgeting because they get to eat M&Ms at the end. So even if they get that, but it's also we have a case study that goes along with that, and the way we know each person has a different set of income and expense for the case study because you judge what type of expense or how much income based upon the color M&Ms that you have. Each color represents a different type of expense or a type of income. And so inevitably though, the person in the case study winds up outspending by what they earn by a lot. Like they really really wind up spending way more than they earn. And for the most part, when I do this with young people, they just love it. They love talking about what a poor money manager this person is and how they just really need to dial it back. And, but they can at the same time focus on the idea of like really budgeting when you get down to the heart of it is figuring out how to have enough income to cover your expenses. That's kind of the ultimate goal. And so that can usually come across, but it's done in a pretty fun way. And I'll say one tip about the game. I really have to remind people to read the whole card. They often will just skip down to the instructions that says like go forward 2 squares, and they won't even read what the example is because they just want to be the winner. And so I have to slow them down and say, wait, what happened? Why did they get to go ahead? That kind of thing. Any other comments or questions? I bet also, Star, the young people that you work with have some they could provide a lot of good tips to each other for money management as well, and finding things that are that they can carry with them and that won't go bad and things like that. I would imagine too, like food wise.
They did. I mean, working with the youth, particularly at that emerging adult stage, they like to talk with each other about these issues more than they like to talk to the facilitator or the educator. That's much more comfortable. So sometimes these activities provide the starting point for conversations that they have among themselves, which is not a bad thing, provided that they're kind of seeking good information as they go through. But I'm of the opinion that anytime you can get young people to focus at least on one aspect of allocation of their resources or being good stewards of what they have and recognizing what they have and what they don't have, that's really important. But I mean, a lot of kids have that from their parents, okay, hands-on, but a lot of them don't. And any opportunity you can get in the arms of a caring adult to make an impact, it's well worth it.
Mhm.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
Hi, Sharon and Joyce. It's Christine.
Hi,
Hi,
Christine's
Christine.
our coworker. It's so fun to see you on.
Well, I thank you guys so much for sharing this. I do this quite a, I try to implement it in with my students and everything as much as I can,
Mhm.
but I have not found any kind of a curriculum that works.
Yeah.
If I put it that, it's not something the kids are interested in. So I'm very excited to take a look at this. I've seen more, Sharon, of what you do directly and everything like that. And it's wonderful. So I'm sure you two working together, this is going to be great. And I'm very excited to be able to access that.
Oh,
Great,
thank you.
Christine, thank you. I think that you'll find that if it's a little bit of fun, you've got a shot. If it's not fun, well, then there's,
Exactly.
Keep us posted. Let us know
I
how
will.
it's going. Good. Anybody else have any last comments or questions?
we really appreciate you taking the time to sit with us today. And please don't hesitate to email Sharon or myself if you have questions or have any difficulties accessing the materials. And we do hope you would take a minute just to fill out the evaluation. Let us know your feedback. We'd love to hear it. And we really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Joanne, are you still on here? Do you have a question for us? Sometimes people get busy doing other stuff.
Yeah. I guess we could stop recording.
Oh, good idea.